Okay, and I believe we are live. Hello, everybody. It's Uncle Grumpy, and I'm here with Dr. Lawrence Pasternack. It's a beautiful Sunday in Oklahoma. We're doing kind of a off-the-cuff show today. We've got a few things to talk about. One being, I told you guys I would have shirts available online today. So, as you can see, I've got shirts right behind me here. What you can do is, as soon as this is over, and I'll post it in the comments here, as soon as this is over, you can call me. I'm going to put up my phone number. You can call me or message me. I will check for your size. If I have your size, I'll take your order by giving you the link to make the payment. The minute you make the payment, I'll drop it in a bag with your name on and address on the bag, and I will take these to the post office tomorrow. If I don't have your size and you want one, you just need to give me till the end of the week. I will take orders through probably Tuesday and then get an order in, and I can probably have those by Friday and get those out to you next Friday. My shirt guy's pretty good, so we can get those to you just anywhere. I know, Lawrence, I've actually got some people down in Texas who have been waiting for this, so I'm looking forward to writing some Texas addresses on some Uncle Grumpy gear and sending it down south. I think that's pretty cool. So, Lawrence, how are you
Maybe you
doing
need a
today?
special. I'm doing all right. I was just going to say maybe you need a special Texas design too.
That is a good idea. I think maybe we should work on that later today. That's a really good
Mm.
idea. We could get that in the next batch. I'm also working on one that we're going to be doing with Norma Sapp. That one's going to
Mm.
be a lot of fun too. That should be pretty good. Anyway, the shirts, if you don't remember, the shirts, not only do you get to wear the Grumpy gear, but they save you money. Myself and Lawrence have always tried to stop as many of these fees as possible. Lawrence, you remember fighting for the taxes. Well, we couldn't get rid of the taxes, but here we go. You get 20% off for wearing the shirt into Green Country Bud in Tulsa and Sweet Leaf in Bartlesville. I've got a few other dispensaries that have reached out to me down south. I'll be talking to soon, as soon as I can get down there. I've got one in Oklahoma City I'm hoping to work out something with soon. If you have a dispensary somewhere, I know Lawton had reached out to me, reach out again. Let's get these down there. I was just waiting for these events to be over, um, at least the ones I was involved in. So get a hold of me. We will get these shirts, try and get at least one store in every major market to carry the Grumpy shirt with the Grumpy discount, so everybody can at least get rid of the taxes plus some. Isn't that good? I think it
Yeah,
works.
it's great. Your shirts basically function as a tax-free card, a double tax-free
There you
card,
go. Yeah.
basically. Yeah.
It's not just tax free though. You get an extra, what, 2 or 3%, because it's 16 to 18%, I think, depending on where you're at in the state. So,
Yeah.
you're getting an extra 2 to 4% just for being willing to wear the Grumpy shirt. So I think that's a pretty good deal. I used mine yesterday. I went into Green Country and got me some really good live rosin while I was there. Very happy with it, and I saved 20%. So that was great. I was
Mm.
thrilled. The shirts are $20 plus shipping. Shipping actual cost is $3.50 per shirt at the post office. So, and then the bag is another just over $1.25 each. So $5 for shipping in the bag, and that's what it's costing me, and then 20 for the shirt. So again, I'll post it in the comments, and when the video's over, I'll start taking your orders, and I'll get those sent out by tomorrow. So as soon as I can get to the post office in the morning. Okay, Lawrence, that's enough of that for right now. We do have a few things we want to talk about. Let's see. One of them for me is housing. I've still got major fears about the housing issue. I got another message this morning from a person, I'm not going to say names, but a person that is now worried that they're going to lose, and they're down in the Lawton area, and they're supposed to go, I'm looking at their text right now, they're supposed to go and renew theirs next month, their housing assistance. And they've got some medical conditions that are helped by medical marijuana. So they went the legal route and went and got their card. And now she's scared to death. Now she's asking me if she needs to tear this up in front of the lady or how she has to save her housing. She's freaking out, and understandably so. And so am I. Lawrence, what do you think about this?
I find it atrocious. Federal law is that it's up to the local housing authorities to set their policies with regards to existing tenants, existing recipients of the voucher program. And so local authorities, they have the discretion of either banning it outright or going on a case-by-case basis or allowing anybody with a card to use it. It's up to the local authorities. And it sounds like so many of those local authorities have simply decided, without having to do so, without having legal cause to do so, decided that they don't want any cannabis on their properties. They don't want anybody receiving a voucher to be using cannabis. So, somebody with multiple sclerosis, somebody with lupus, somebody with neuropathic pain, and so on, they're being deprived of their medicine. And I just find this terrible because maybe with that medicine, they could improve their financial situation and no longer need the voucher.
Yeah, I'm finding it scary. I mean, I really am. These are the people that have been contacting me since I started this, and since I started doing my activism in this. And what I mean by these are the people, what I mean is the people that are on what some might consider the edge of society. They're barely hanging on. It's beyond paycheck to paycheck. They're living disability check to disability check, and they're visiting the food bank in between. And all they want is a chance to get out of pain or to get out of whatever mental issue or whatever situation is that cannabis helps with them. In a lot of cases, to save their life because a lot of them have cancer. All they want is to be like everybody else. And this is a really scary scenario, and I'm very worried because while I think that the fuss that we've raised about the issue the other day with the one we discussed with Scott Fetgetter with the releasing of information, okay? I honestly believe that with the fuss that we've created with that there's enough pressure there that something's probably going to get done. And I think, I could be wrong, and we have been wrong before, and there was other things like this they told us wouldn't happen that happened. So, and the fact that this language is in there would be one of those. Am I correct?
Right. That's right. That's right. We were told that that language was going to be removed.
Right. So
Yep.
I'm not accusing anybody of lying or anything like that. I'm not trying to offend anybody in the government. I'm saying the government as a whole has not come through for us in this department. We must stay vigilant on this. And I think because of the pressure that we brought up on that something's going to get done. My concern is nothing's getting done about the housing. My concern is that this is going to be a tougher one. I'm not sure who we call. Do we start with whoever's making this decision at the housing authority? Would that be a good thing to do, to light up their phones for a few days and let them know this is not how they want us to how we want them to represent Oklahoma? This is not how we think. Or can we figure out who this person's boss is, who the top of the food chain is? Do we call the governor? We've got to find a way to stop this.
Yeah, as we're talking, I am just going over some of the language in 2612 because I recall in the original version of the Unity Bill, we had language in there that said that having a medical marijuana card shall not be the basis for the denial of any public benefit. And at this point, I would have to go through 2612 again to see whether that language or some variant of it is still there. But there may be a statutory basis to fight it. That's something for us to look at. Still, morally speaking, I just find it just utterly unacceptable for people who have other people's lives in their hands to simply blanket say that nobody could receive this medicine. It just shocks me. You know, all I keep on thinking about are the German Nuremberg laws that denied Jews all the access to housing, access to jobs, ultimately access to living. And it just feels the same to me what the government here is doing. If you're a cannabis user, you're denied benefits. You know, you're denied organ transplants, you're denied housing, you're denied jobs. How is this any different?
So I want to discuss something out loud that we discussed in private
Mm,
yesterday. I think it's relevant right now. We should just bounce it around for a minute and then move on. And that is
mm,
next year's petition. You guys know what
mm.
our intent has been here. We've said what our intent was. That was to write a full access petition this summer while working with the legislators we have relationships with to try and repair some of what's out there. Running the petition next year while the legislators are in session, putting pressure on them to cooperate on repairing what we find wrong with 788 now, and or running full access next year, running right over them with it and taking control out of their hands and making it a constitutional amendment. Um, the only other option to that would be them running it themselves as a state statute, giving us full access and giving us the right to vote on it. And I want to encourage them to think hard about that because that could be a solution. And that would just mean stepping up and doing their job, which is representing the people and putting forward the bills that the people want. We'll help them write this. But what I want to bring up
Yeah,
now is, go ahead.
could we just go back because I found the language related to housing. So so House Bill 2612, Section 8, Paragraph C. Let me put it up for everybody. Hang on a second here. Here it is. So this is 2612. Um, what was it? Section 8, I forget now. Paragraph D. A medical marijuana patient or caregiver license shall not be denied eligibility in public assistance program, including but not limited to Medicaid Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, Women, Infant, and Children Nutrition Program, temporary assistance for needy families, or other such public assistance programs based solely on his or her status as a medical marijuana patient or caregiver licensee, unless required by federal law. And it's not required by federal law. So
Right.
right here on this page is the legal protection that everybody in public housing has by state law. Local
Okay,
authorities
great.
are not legally allowed to deny current recipients of housing vouchers continued housing benefits. They're not allowed to by this law.
All right, folks, there it is. Print that off. Take that to your caseworker. Tell them to chew on that one for a minute. That looks like the basis for a lawsuit. So it's time to get started. Look, what my point was about the petition, to bring it back to this, is to say that we could do that, but another option that I mentioned to Lawrence last night, we're bouncing around. I want to know what everybody thinks, including you, Lawrence,
Mm.
is to do that while also running decriminalization. Because I think until we run a decriminalization bill and we decriminalize cannabis in Oklahoma, we're going to keep going back to having to read the fine print. What do you think?
Well, you know, even if we had decriminalization, the thing is that housing authorities could still impose what they want to impose and so on. Employers can still impose what they want to impose. So while it does mean that there won't be a paper trail of people having access to cannabis, still, you know, people potentially, if they're consuming on premises or if they have it in their body fluids, can still be suffering repercussions. You know, until federal law changes, that's still a problem. But nevertheless, I think one question is, um, for the 2020 election, there should be some more ballot questions. We have the time to do it. We have the infrastructure to get the signatures with all of the dispensaries around the state. And who knows what's going to happen at the federal level. But if we have the States Act, which basically leaves it open for every state to decide what they want, then by the time we get to November 2020, if federal laws change, then something may pass at the ballot that maybe today wouldn't pass. And so be it adult use, be it decriminalization, be it expungement of records, vacating of former sentences, there are a lot of possibilities. And then the question is which ones to pursue.
Well, everybody needs to give us their input. We want to know what everybody thinks, so we may come up with an idea we haven't thought of yet. This takes everybody. I do think they're hitting us with 1,000 paper cuts. So I think we've got to hit back in the same way. And I mean, decriminalize, full access petition, and any other thing we can think of that we might be able to get through that might help this situation. All right, to move on to something else for a minute, we are going to go back to that. If you didn't get the name or the section in that, we'll have Lawrence say that again here in a minute, and we will also post that in the comments and at the top of the video, because this looks like the basis for your lawsuit, and we want to help you make that happen. So we're going to make sure you get that. Next here on the list, Lawrence, you wanted to talk about delivery. Tell me what's going on in your mind about delivery. I hear someone's about to be doing that. Is that the case?
So I have seen comments. I have seen comments on Facebook that there is a business that is looking at delivery. And so the background to this is that there is no law prohibiting delivery. There is language from the Department of Health in the regulations that prohibit delivery at the regulatory level. But as I've been saying for the past year, Mike Hunter's letter from July 2018, where Hunter goes over what the Department of Health can't do, and that has to do with basically setting rules for business operations that aren't statutorily allowed for the Department of Health to involve themselves in, and that includes location, office hours, or business hours, and a bunch of other things that by extrapolation, the Department of Health shouldn't have the authority to ban delivery. They shouldn't be, they're not allowed to ban locations, they're not allowed to ban hours of operation. Why should they be allowed to ban how they get the cannabis to the patient? It doesn't seem to be within the purview of the Department of Health to set that rule. I'm shocked that no dispensary has challenged that over the last year, but no dispensary has challenged it. Now, with 2612, it's Section 16, if I recall. So 2612 includes a new provision for transporter licenses. Section 16. So a transporter license only costs $100. The transport license authorizes the transportation of cannabis to or from dispensaries. So I don't see anything in that section that says that the transporter license can't be used as the basis for a delivery service. As such, it seems to me that 2612 itself could be construed as overriding the Department of Health regulation against delivery. And the reason why I think this matters is somebody with multiple sclerosis who's having a bad flare-up, why should they have to get behind the wheel to go to a dispensary to get their medicine? Somebody who in chronic pain is laying in bed in pain and needs to get their medicine, why should they have to suffer to get that medicine? Pharmacies deliver. And so why can't these cannabis dispensaries deliver to the patients in need? And if people are worried about, consequences like delivering to somebody without a card or the risk of getting robbed, all that stuff could be managed. But nevertheless, there are a lot of people who are in pain, who are struggling physically. Why should we have to force them behind the wheel? That's not good for them. That's not good for road safety. Public interest is we should allow delivery.
Yeah, and they're already doing ordering online. People order online and they stop by the dispensary and they pick it up. So they've already figured that out. Why not just deliver it? I mean, it's
Right.
going to happen, and like you say, it's just due to this one department that it's not. And I know during the session when we talked about it, the resistance to the idea came out of the Senate, as did the
Hmm.
resistance to just about everything.
Yeah.
And on that note, I want to remind everybody that we are um, going into an election year next year at the same time that we're going to be doing all of this, talking about all this again, fighting about all this in the Capitol. And we need to find some way to unite that 507,000 again. I know that 160,000 of us will be united because no matter what you say, even the laziest person, when it affects them personally, they'll get active. And this fear of the data dump and everything else affects every single card holder. So they've definitely united us in that aspect. But we need the rest of the 507,000 to unite to change some of these Senate seats. I've got real concern for the power structure in the Senate and for their determination in restricting this program. What do you think?
Well, the fact is that we have 150,000 patients. We have access throughout the state. What are they trying to restrict? What, like, they might have legitimate public health concerns, but then I don't see how any concerns actually track with what the agenda is in their legislation. So it's like maybe they wish that they could have stopped 788 from ever passing, but the fact is it's passed, right? The fact is there's no qualifying conditions, and we've had this massive number of applicants, patient licenses already. We have dispensaries throughout the state. So once again, this is something it's not new. Cannabis has not suddenly miraculously entered into Oklahoma after the passage of 7088. This has been around forever, right? Federal statistics show that about 6% of Oklahomans use cannabis on a regular basis before 788. So it's just always been there. So what we need to do is we need to have smart regulations. And trying to restrict it, well, part of what's happened is that because before 788 passed, the Senate, stuck their feet in the ground with 1120 and refused to move on it, that we ended up with no regulatory structure when 788 passed. So let's be reasonable, right? Let's come up with reasonable regulations that fit the science for once and actually reflect the needs of the population, as opposed to simply just a draconian measure based upon anger and hate and resentment and ideology.
Yeah, but just like I do from the meetings, that they'll do some of what's practical. The Senate has come around in some areas that are practical because, as you say, it's here.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not necessarily wanting to do things that are scientific. That's a different way to look at it.
Yeah.
I know Senator Paxton has done a couple good things in a couple of his bills that were practical, and he's done a couple draconian things. So I don't think I think you're right, and I think they're avoiding the science, the reality, as much as they can.
And they're getting, honestly, I think they're getting a lot of bad advice too. Like, what is it, that national organization, SAM, Smart Approaches to Marijuana, something like that? The advice that they give to states is just unscientific. It's like they don't understand the science of cannabis. Like when they want to restrict THC levels, for instance, it's like somebody who wants to have a certain level of psychoactivity, restricting THC levels will have no impact whatsoever on that, because rather than just inhaling twice, they inhale 3 times and they get the same amount. Percentages don't matter. It's milligrams that matter, and you get more milligrams by simply inhaling more. So it's just idiotic. It's like it doesn't take much to understand this stuff. And what's being presented by groups like SAM simply doesn't reflect basic science. And unfortunately, a lot of legislators are listening to Sam.
Well, and that's why I say what I say, and that is that we have to unite and remove some of them, because I don't see a solution. I don't think you're going to get. There's certain senators, and I'm not going to say who on here right now. We'll wait and see who's running against them. But there's certain senators that I don't think you're going to get on board. Period. And unfortunately, I think that they're in positions that throw a monkey wrench in the machine. And so therefore, I don't see any solution other than to start as soon as possible, figure out who's running against them, make sure they're the right candidate to replace them, and then do everything in our power to unite and help replace that person. And I think if we attack this one county at a time with the senators, we might actually make a difference, because all we need to do is replace a few. What did we do? 20 new ones last time, not all because they lost election, but some because they just didn't run again or they were turned out or whatever. So we got some of that happening this time too. And the more pressure we put on them, possibly the more of them won't run again. And I hate to say it, but we don't need career politicians.
That is true. And, if one of the arguments for politicians continuing on in their position is, well, they've gained this expertise, they now understand how the system works, and they're better at legislating because of this maturation process, I don't see evidence of that, at least with regards to cannabis law, which is, one of the few things that I really have looked into in depth. They don't understand. They don't understand the social dynamics. They don't understand the epidemiology. They don't understand the science, and they don't seem to be looking beyond our state for solutions. So,
as we
I
talked the
honestly,
other
I
day
just don't see it.
about how they don't vote, as we talked the other day about how they don't vote the way that we want them to, as you pointed out, you remember that when you were talking with Representative Fettgetter about how they tend to get a disconnect and vote against what we want anyway. That sounds kind of like what you're describing there. They get that disconnect, and then the Senate's the first body that loses touch and starts working in its own best interest instead of ours.
Part of what bothers me is that I think the culture of the Senate is they're senators, right? They're not just representatives. They are sort of the elder statesmen of Oklahoma. They are the wise, mature individuals who are here basically to protect Oklahomans from themselves. Well, however noble that sounds, they actually need to learn something in order to do that. And honestly, I just routinely find that there's just a dogma and a willingness to listen to people, who are telling them what they already want to hear, rather than really being informed. And once again, I can't say that this is the case across the board, but when it comes to what I've seen with regards to cannabis science, it's just not good.
Okay, well, and the last subject I have here down is kind of what we've been talking about, and that is trust of the government. You want to recap what you said the other day about that statement that I should have, as an American who grew up here with an American education, should have known exactly who the statement came from. Didn't know it off the top of my head. I was able to give you my best idea of what I thought it was, which turned out to be basically the same thing. So at least that was good. But go ahead and refresh us on what that was, so we all understand. It's not the individuals we don't trust, it's the body.
Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty,
And that was what we were
which,
talking about the other
has
day
been
when we,
attributed to Jefferson, has been attributed to a few people. I think it was a saying of the day, but eternal vigilance is the price of liberty.
and that would be not trusting your government as a body. You can trust the relationships you have with the individuals, but the body as a whole, especially as you're saying a minute ago, when you get to the Senate, has such a disconnect that's when you really have to go at it with skepticism. And one of the things that I stick to in my mind that I remember when I hear that I should trust the government is something told to me by somebody in the government. And she said, the minute somebody in government tells you that you should trust the government, you need to look out, because that's the minute that you're in trouble. She told me that in her mind that was bloviating, and it's lip service, I think. I don't know, and I'm not attributing that to our conversation the other day with the legislator, just to this situation. Okay, Lawrence, anything
Well,
else you want to talk about?
one thing I could say is that we want to be able to trust, right? But we need to be cautious about that. And we could hope for the best, right? We don't necessarily need to think that somebody is corrupt or somebody is incompetent. We need not necessarily dismiss them as untrustworthy. But at the same time, we should give them the respect that they may be trying to do their best. But at the same time, that doesn't mean we should let up.
Okay,
Greg?
so let's recap on what you put that thing back up, if you don't mind, real quickly, and tell everybody about that again. Let's refresh their memory there in case somebody missed it. This is important, people. This might be
All
the
right.
solution to
So
our housing issue.
House Bill 2612, Section 8, uh, Paragraph D. Unfortunately, I have it down at the bottom of the screen here. Let me just redo that. I have to stop sharing, then put it back up. So 1 second. Change the screen. All right. So again, House Bill 2612, Section 8, Paragraph D. Medical marijuana patient or caregiver licensee shall not be denied eligibility in public assistance programs, including but not limited to Medicaid, SNAP, WIC, TANF, or other such public assistance programs based solely on his or her status as a medical marijuana patient or caregiver licensee, unless required by federal law. And there's a whole bunch of documentation from HUD that's pretty darn clear and being reiterated for a number of years that HUD's position is for anybody currently enrolled in a housing voucher program, it is up to the local authorities to decide what their policy is with regards to the use of medical marijuana. And
Okay.
now we have, through 2612, the law saying they cannot deny access to these programs based upon that status.
I was just sitting here having a little flashback. I think we talked about this a while back when this first came up. And I remember then, maybe it was just in my head, maybe it wasn't on Facebook, I don't know. But I remember this coming up, and here's the issue. 2612 doesn't take effect until, what, August 26th, 28th, something like that? Right?
Yeah, I think
So all
that's
these
right.
people that I'm talking about that are reaching out to me right now, that are going through it right now,
Yes.
they're all currently not protected by this, and there would be the problem. This would be why we have to stop. We have to force the people making these decisions to change their decision. The law isn't going to
Right.
do it
So,
until this takes effect. So we have to put the pressure somewhere to get somebody to stop making this decision and reverse those they've made already, because I know people have already had to turn their cards in to keep their housing.
yeah, so that might be the game that's going on. That slipped my mind that if this law is not effective until 90 days after sine die, so that's August 26th, 29th or so, then maybe the game that's being played by the local authorities is we have this little narrow window to kick out all those potheads. So let's use it
Right,
now before it's too late, because as soon as the law comes in,
right.
our hands are tied.
So let's
Maybe that's what's
understand
going
that,
on.
people. The people that are making this decision are making a decision to deliberately, knowingly put this this stressor, this kick out people who use cannabis. This is a personal decision made by people who obviously are against cannabis, or they're doing it purely for financial reasons because they can now cut their budget. Now all of a sudden maybe the housing department is thinking, hey, we get that raise we haven't gotten in years. We just got to kick out a few people. I don't know, but clearly Lawrence has found us as he always does. Lawrence has found the saving grace here, but this is the saving grace not in effect until the end of August. So we have real sky falling on real people right now, and that we have to fix. All right, Lawrence, why don't you go ahead and shrink that down? All right.
Yeah, there is
Okay,
no
well,
emergency clause on this, and so 90 days after sign or die. Yeah.
so that gives them 90 days to oppress, 90 days to evict as many people as they can, get rid of all those potheads.
Yeah, my recollection is that the letters from the local authorities started to come out around February of this year. So presumably there was a meeting of local authorities and they made the decision at the beginning of this year to establish this policy. And those letters said that their hands are tied, federal law requires it, but that's just not true, right? That I have other documents here, I could put them up on the screen from HUD that clearly indicate that it's up to local authorities to make this determination. And so the state authorities were just misinformed or what, but their hands aren't tied. And so that decision in February doesn't track with the law, and they've been using it ever since to deny benefits that they shouldn't be necessarily denying. And as of the end of August, are not even legally allowed to deny.
How many more homeless do you think we're going to make during this period since they put out this opinion and they've decided to start doing this? I mean, it could be hundreds.
You know, and here's an irony, right? So one of the arguments that were used against 788 is that when cannabis is legalized, homelessness increases. Well, in Denver, the reason why was gentrification. All of these really poor neighborhoods that had Section 8 housing there, all those poor neighborhoods, their value went up enormously as money came into the city, and all the residents were being kicked out onto the streets. They couldn't afford anywhere to go because all the prices went up for rent. So now what's going to happen is they're going to complain that homelessness has gone up in Oklahoma since 788 passed. But if that's the case, then it's going up because they're kicking people on the streets. So, you know, if homelessness goes up and they want to attribute it to cannabis, it might very well be that the housing authority are the ones responsible for that homelessness. And again, as you say, how many people's lives have been hurt by this decision? Real people who had a roof over their heads and now don't.
So, folks, who's going to be the last one to die? Who's going to be the last one to get kicked out of their house? Who's going to be the last one to get arrested and be put in jail? Who's going to be the last one? That's up to us. We either fix it or we don't, and it keeps happening. As Lawrence has pointed out, the law isn't going to take care of this until August. We've got to figure out some way to address it before then. I want to suggest this, Lawrence, that we spend the next couple days until like Tuesday evening looking up some more information about this, getting it all lined out, including names and phone numbers, and do a special show about that and put out all those names and phone numbers of everybody that needs to be called. We'll write a little something on what we think we would like them to say. You can say what you want, but we'll give you some words if you need them, and see what we can do about putting some pressure on this week. What do you think?
Sure. You know, I could, if you want, right on my screen here I have a letter from the General Counsel of the federal HUD, Housing and Urban Development, on this issue. And I can just go to this concluding paragraph here, which summarizes it. So this is just one of many documents out there, which just very succinctly says that current residents may continue to use medical marijuana, that it's left to the discretion of the local authorities to determine what their policies are. They have statutorily authorized discretion. The hands of local authorities aren't tied. Federal law doesn't require them to deny these benefits. Right here, from the General Counsel of HUD, is they have statutorily authorized discretion. Right?
So
I could
perhaps
provide
we
this
need to
letter to
send about
people.
100,000 copies of that to the people making these decisions. I don't know. We need to do something. Like I said, save that for the show Tuesday, along with everything else we can gather. Let's get what we can together so we can do this right, so we can give everybody a plan of attack, a strategy on how to accomplish this. I have messaged with Representative Eccles a couple times in the last few days. He talked about possibly coming on next week if he's back. I'm not sure where he is. I don't think he's in town right now, but it was about a different issue. It was about the other issue we talked about with the data dump, but I'm sure he'd be happy to try and address this issue as well. And let's see what we can do about fixing that, because that is the one that's got me real scared right now. I understand the data dump. I believe that if we stay vigilant on it, we're going to get that repaired, although it wouldn't be the first time they sat right in front of us and said one thing and did another. But the housing, I'm not seeing any movement by anybody on the housing, so I want that to be on everybody's mind right now. We've got people who are going to lose everything. Look, I imagine there'll be people who probably commit suicide because of this, because they suddenly see nothing. I mean, we're talking about people who are, or some people who are already on the end. You know, they're already riding that fine line, and then you go and take away half their housing. I know people personally in the movement that are out buying cans of soup a day for each meal so they can say, and that's their budget because that's what they can afford. And if they lost half their housing voucher, they wouldn't get that can of soup. And that's just, we can't do this, folks. This isn't us. But we've got a few people making a decision that is making that us, because they are representing us. How we take care of the worst of us matters. So we got to do this, folks. We got to do this. All right, Lawrence, anything else before we wrap it up?
That is all.
Okay, well, I want to remind everybody about the shirts. Uncle Grumpy gear. Now, as you see, I've got them all hanging here so you can see what they look like if you don't already know. The blue one has the Grumpy Gear logo on the front. You can't spell health care without THC on the back. The green one has the Grumpy Gear logo on the front and Living in Flower in the back. And the white one is the original one. That's the Uncle Grumpy's Call to Action, Mad as Hell. Extremely appropriate right now. That doesn't have anything on the back. That's right on the front. And then, of course, I'm wearing the red one, which has, Mad as Hell on the front, has my mug on the back, and says Uncle Grumpy's Call to Action. And the shirts get you 20% off. Green Country Bud, 89th in Yale and Tulsa. Sweet Leaf in Bartlesville. We've saved you more than the taxes. I'm never going to pay retail again. That's it. I'm going to find a store in every community that I need to go to that's willing to do the Grumpy deal so everybody else can get it too. And that way when I come through, I can pick something up and not pay the taxes. I don't like that. I don't like taxes on medicine.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Lawrence, I know you have a shirt. I wish you could have found it. I want to see you in a Grumpy gear.
I have that red shirt. I just don't know what I did with it. I checked my T-shirt drawer. I remember putting it in my office, but I haven't found it yet.
Well,
you should see my closet back there. It's just a mess.
We need to follow up with that dispensary in your area and get the Grumpy Gear discount there, and then you're going to have to get it out because you're going to want to save 20%. So there you go. Because it's any shirt, guys. Any one of the Grumpy Gear shirts. Any one of the Uncle Grumpy shirts. So we're here to save you money. This is how we're doing it. All right. I think that's about
Grumpy
it.
Caps.
What's that?
Grumpy Caps. Grumpy Caps, too.
I've already got a guy working on the on that. Yeah, it should have
Yeah.
caps. Should have caps in a couple weeks. I'm also thinking about bandanas. If you guys want those, anything else you guys can think of you want, I've got a guy who can get it all done right here locally in Oklahoma. So it's all good for everybody. All right, that's it, right?
Yep.
Okay, well, that's it. Unless something breaking happens today. Until next time, stay grumpy. See you on the road.
Bye, everyone.